As we get started, one quick pointer. We will dive into the topic today, and it's on TPRM and the regulatory compliance, how it's evolving. We have a specific section on the Q&A, and we will take all your questions at the end of the session. So we have a specific time for that. But in the meanwhile, as we go through this, if you see any questions that arise, feel free to put it in the Q&A section or in the chat, and we'll take it up at the end. Right? So great, we can get started with our topic. So third parties, right? All businesses today engage with partners for delivering their business outcomes. You may call them partners, you may call them vendors, you may call them suppliers, but basically they are any third parties with whom you have a contract or an agreement to deliver a specific objective for your business outcomes, right? Now, engaging a third party has various benefits. The first one is that you have faster time to market. You are able to focus on your core business objectives. You have a larger talent pool and skill pool that you can tap into. But while that is true, it also brings in various risks that are associated with it. And this applies to the entire organization, not just a specific segment to it. So this could be as simple as, your operational risks. It could be from your financial aspect. It could be regulatory. It could be compliance. And of course, being cybersecurity practitioners, we have to, focus on the key cybersecurity related ones. So whether it's information security, cybersecurity, legal and regulatory compliance, data protection and privacy, business continuity, all of these risks apply when it comes to engaging with third parties. So it becomes very crucial that you have a proper process to manage this. So what is typically called as a third party risk management process. And a typical third party risk management process, you can have various frameworks to it, but it typically consists of about 6 steps. Starting from your, initiation, wherein you inventory all your third party and the kind of services they provide, and then building a framework for assessing and classifying your different third parties, and then doing the actual assessment based on the tiering, and then onboarding these third parties to provide services and technologies, and your ongoing monitoring and periodic assessments. And finally, with many business decisions that we take, a lot of times we also terminate or offboard these third parties. So again, there's a process that is needed for that. So a typical third party risk management process consists of this 6 phases, right?
Okay, good. Thanks for the introduction, Bharat. I think you know um, how is the third party landscape evolving, right? Not just in India, but across the globe. But focused a little more on India in this webinar, right? So why do organizations or business look for a third party, right? Typically business or organizations wants to focus on their core business, right? They want to put in their effort, their skill on their core business, the core values and mission, right? And this is where third parties play a major role for the organizations to scale, to grow along, right? The organizations look towards an outsourced vendor or a third party, right, in providing additional support which is not maybe core to them, right? For an example, a product company may look at a third party where an IT operations is managed, right? Yeah. In a banking, right, in a banking space, right, a typical the banking core business function is being done within the bank. The some IT functions, some form of application development, all those are looked outside, right? So that is where now in India, the Indian business is globally expanding, and primarily a lot of third party outsourced vendors, and I would sometimes call them as partners in the business, right? They are helping in the expansion. One next big thing is the fintech. Okay, we all know the digital economy in the country, the growth of digital economy in the country, and all startups or any organization which is supporting in the digital economy outside of the banks or the NBFCs, they are called as fintechs, and they are today an important third party in helping the business and the banking sector grow.
Yeah, they're a key component in the banking expansion.
Completely, they are a very key component. In some cases, the banks are also not just as third parties, they are as partners, right? Yeah. In they are also aiding in the core function also as a partner. In, let's say, there is an application internally, there is also an add-on application that is run by the third party in doing the same activity. And in this age, we have seen banks completely operate from a complete outsourced vendor, right? We have seen one such bank in the country where the complete IT operations or any operations outside of the core function, fully digital banking was done by an outsourced party or a third party vendor. Not just that, today loans are getting disbursed in minutes. Okay, KYC is done. Okay, one and a regulated entity has multiple KYC partners, so that any customers from across the country, be it rural or urban or any tier cities, they are able to do a KYC and open bank accounts in a span of
So
minutes.
partners have become very critical for banks to expand and deliver services to the consumers very fast.
Definitely,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
that's there,
that's
right?
true.
And not just that, adding to that, privacy regulations, right? Okay, customer data is the most important, and as a security practitioner, we look at data protection, regulatory compliance, and the overall risk management. That privacy is a very important aspect, right? With the recent introduction of the India's privacy bill, digital data protection bill, right, privacy has become important. It's not about my business and customers data is mine, right? We always have the vendors who are potentially the processors and sub processors, that the data processor, the data sub processors have to be considered, right? So one, and adding all this, regulators have now really given the most important to the space of third party risk. Wherever I go and meet with the clients, right, in any audit, in any external regulatory audits, one of the key questions that the regulators are asking is, how are you managing your third parties? Who are your critical third parties? How are you finding who's critical? How will any disruption to them will impact your business? These are the questions that are continuously being asked, right? One. Now, with all this, I think I would maybe like to give some a few examples, okay, as to how cyber threats and data breaches have added to the importance of managing the risk with the third parties, right? Solar winds, everybody knows, okay, the
Yeah.
solar winds and the supply chain attack along with that. Recently, this year, Bank of America found out that there was a customer breach through their third party Infosys managing some of their services, and this was because of a cyber incident. Okay, and it's not just in the regulated space or the banking sector, digital economy, or anything. It's not like that, but I'll take an example of Toyota. Very,
Yeah.
very interesting example. Toyota had to pause their business operations for almost 15-20 days
Wow.
because one of their critical vendors, which they identify that the vendor is critical later, had a cyber incident. It was just a parts provider. Toyota was getting some important parts for their car manufacturing for them, but the vendor had a cyber incident, and because of that, Toyota has to pause business
So it's no
operations.
longer, so typically we believe that what, it's an attack that has happened somewhere and I'm not impacted. But anything in your supply chain, and it doesn't matter which industry you are in, if your supply chain there's any impact, you are impacted. So
Definitely.
it's not just security within the organization, it's interacting all it's securing all the interactions, all the dependencies that you have, and that's what is critical. And hence this webinar and hence the focus that is there,
Yeah.
right?
And let's take a quick snapshot of the regulations in the country with in line with the third party risk management. Or I want to start with saying that are these regulations fully new, where the focus of third party has come in just now in the recent past? Definitely no, right? RBI in its Gopalakrishna committee and all the circular cyber security framework, okay, which is a as of today it's an 8-9 year old circular, has asked and wanted to focus on the risk from the vendors or the third parties, right? IRDAI, SEBI has their importance, and is looking for how are you managing your third party risk, right? Each of these guidelines do. UDAI regulations have also expanded the scope in finding out how the authentication agencies are managing any kind of services that are being outsourced to third parties. This we saw recently in the the audit and the updated requirements from UDAI. They have also started focusing on it.
So essentially, banking and financial space, because it's highly regulated and it's of course got to do with money, right? There is a lot of focus. So as always, the scrutiny starts from there, wherein they start, analyzing and saying that, what, how are you managing third party risk? And that's what we are saying. But it is beyond that, well, expanding into other areas as well. And of course, if you adopt standards, global standards, I think, you can have a framework from that, managing your critical risks. You just want to touch on that, Venkat?
Yes, I think ISO, right? Everybody, almost all the organizations from an ISMS perspective, ISO is the first go-to standard. And ISO has, 2005, there has been a version 2013,
Yeah.
2022. It's not like in latest version, supplier governance and vendor risk management has been given an importance or important control. It has been there from 2005. And 2013 was given more importance, and now in 2022 version, again, third party risk, vendor risk management, or supplier governance has gained much prominence.
So as the landscape is evolving, so are the standards, so are the regulations. So that's how the scrutiny arises. But it's not as if you only have to do it when the regulation demands it or the standard demands it, or you have to do something different for everybody. We can look at what are some strategies of how you can tackle this.
Exactly. At a high level, right? Okay, what can I, how can I tackle the third party risk, right? As a practitioner, I'll tell you what should I think when I'm looking at an outsourcing vendor, when I'm trying to look at a service partner who I'm going to, provide take service from, right? Okay, for me, it's these 4 points here, right? I will first look at, am I sharing data? Is the vendor going to collect, share or store or process
Process
any
data.
data that is mine, right? It is not about my service that I'm ordering, it is also about my data. That's it. The customers are coming to the vendor, okay, in the brand name of my entity.
Yeah.
Okay, it's my reputation that is at stake, and it's the customer privacy that I'm responsible and accountable for, right? The other point, definitely an important, right? In the CIA, right? Availability,
Yeah.
right? Whether any disruption to the, will there be any impact to my business if there is any disruption or any kind of an availability issue from the vendor? That I think this question has to be definitely asked, okay? And very important in profiling the risk of the vendor and to see whether it's a critical, non-critical, high, medium, low, however we do. And today we see NBFCs, right? NBFCs are outsourcing their complete IT
IT
operations to
operations.
them.
Yeah.
And not just that, we also see organizations moving to cloud. They are cloud ready organization. We are a cloud startup, everything. But the IT outsourcing or the IT operations is outsourced.
Correct.
Applications, we take SaaS based application. We use so many SaaS applications where the vendor has our data. Our customers are being used to, asked to use the same application, and we take that. And all that, every data is with some third party or managed, and risk is with us. And there is a vendor risk component that's there. So these four are very, very important aspects that I will look at a first point.
Okay. So now if you look at, what are, we looked at, what areas you should focus on, and what are the areas of concern, right? Now, what are some strategies that we can look at? So right at the start, having a strong risk management framework is important. So how you tier your vendors, how you profile them, and then, the applicability of controls, the kind of monitoring that you need is totally based on this framework. So you have a good foundational risk framework that is built, and then, that's a good start. The second one will be on the kind of contracts, right? So contracts, you need the requirements to be enforceable. So anything that you are demanding as requirements should be included in your contract. So this could be related to information and cybersecurity. This could be related to data protection, privacy, business continuity, all of this. And of course, the big one that all companies, look to whenever they have a contract, which is the right to audit, right? You need to have a right to audit clause to go ahead and audit them and see the effectiveness of controls. Now, while auditing is a periodic activity you can take, a better or a more robust mechanism would be having a monitoring mechanism wherein you focus on specific KPIs like incident management, patch management, vulnerability management for your critical vendors. So this way you are assured of the posture and you know how the practices are on an ongoing basis. Now, while you do all of this, a standardized assessment is very important, right? We talked about the right to audit clause, right? So doing periodic assessments is important and having the standardized. So in the US, the adoption of SIG and SIG-Lite is very much on the up. In fact, I think it's been very popular, and mid-sized, large enterprises, very large enterprises have adopted SIG and SIG-Lite a lot, and it also provides a continuity and a comprehensive framework for the vendors also, because they know what is coming their way, and it provides an assurance for the companies which are using them to say that, you know what, this gives me an assurance on whether the vendor posture is clear or not. In India, we do not yet have a very standardized assessment that is there. Companies are building it basis their own internal requirements or regulatory requirements, and I think that's a crucial market need. And if you talk about all of this and, not talk about automation, given how we have spoken about technology, so automating as much of this, right from your framework to onboarding to management and monitoring of these risks, that's the way to go, because you're not dependent on, a specific process or people to, manage your risk. So these, I would say, are key strategies in managing your third party risks.
Great. I think you touched upon an important topic of automation, and that only makes me think if there is any, a platform, or how it can all be done through a very single or a centralized platform. As I was researching, I actually found out that, okay, how are third party risk managed in organizations? How do organizations manage the third party risk? Right. A very interesting statistic that caught my eyes was that 40% of organizations use third party risk management tool. Okay, some
Okay.
form of a platform or a tool, right?
Only 40%.
Only 40%, and it is globally. And
Okay.
I would say, this number for me globally is at 40%, and in India specifically, I would definitely say it's at
Much less.
25 30
Yeah.
percent definitely. I think the 70% how they manage third party risk is through Excel sheets, each having separate Excel sheets. Consolidating that and viewing it together as a dashboard is not that easy. Not just that, I think in some places the assessments are also quite ad hoc, because organizations struggle in terms of tiring with the risk. Focus on third party assessments itself is in some places, it's just coming up. It's in a very nascent stage in the country, is what I would say, right? And like I said, it's 70%. Okay, it's not done using a platform, and potentially not somewhere centralized.
So as a practice, it is not very mature. It's very nascent. So right from profiling to, how you standardize your assessments to how you track and manage this. All of this is ad hoc and need basis. So some organizations could still be ahead of the curve, but a lot of them are still, very early adopters and having very ad hoc practices.
Correct.
Right. So I think that's pretty much what it is. So now how do you manage this going forward? Right. So if you have a platform, and that the way to approach this would be through a platform, right, where you can centrally manage all your risks for your third parties, not just from, so you have your risk management framework is there on the platform, what your critical risks are, and all of that is managed in that one single place. You tier your vendors, you conduct your assessments in a standardized manner, right, a platform standardized assessment, and then your continuous monitoring of the key risk indicators and key performance indicators. That will give you a very unified central view of how your third party risk management program is, right? And just want to talk. So I, at the start of the call, I said that, what, of the webinar, I mentioned that, I'm also heading the product, right? So at Cyrax, we have built our GRC platform, which is Compass, which today is managing, multiple requirements in the risk and compliance needs of organizations. And third party risk management is something that we are going to focus on. We are already focusing on, and we want to build our own specialized module on TPRM, wherein you can manage all these processes for your third parties on Compass. So today it is addressing continuous compliance and unified compliance, and risk management is something that's coming onto the platform in the next couple of weeks. And TPRM is something that we are planning to launch in a couple of months, wherein you will be able to add vendors, profile them, assess them, and then, do continuous monitoring. And that, I think, will be key in how we standardize this assessment and move the needle in terms of the adoption and stabilization of the TPRM practice.
I totally agree. As a practitioner, like you, when you mention continuous monitoring of the vendors, that is the very interesting part, right? Wherever we go off late, what we hear is that we want to, the regulators are looking for a clean report, right? So it's very interesting. It's like they don't want any gaps anywhere, right? They want to be as clean as possible. The system to be operating at the lowest risk possible, right? Any kind of clearance, license, everywhere. right? I'm sure that's, in terms of continuous monitoring, it's going to help, right,
Yeah.
for organizations to continuously tell themselves, assure some form of an assurance that's being provided.
And an
That
early warning system to say what are your issues, what risks do you see recurring, and what mitigation do you put in place.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I think well put, and very, I think that's what we we had planned for. And in terms of any questions, we are ready to take those questions. Okay, I think
Do we
already
have any
some
questions
questions
already?
are coming. Okay, I think one of the questions is from Riaz. Hi Riaz. How have recent regulatory changes influenced TPRM practices?
Yeah. You
Okay,
want to?
I'll take it up.
Yeah.
I think the recent regulatory changes, have changed TPRM practices. Organizations have become more focused, and also in terms of investing more in the practice of TPRM, doing regular assessments of their vendors, trying to have a very comprehensive framework of managing the third party risk has definitely gained prominence. Like I said, regulators have started now coming and asking, as part of their external audits anywhere, uh, who are your third parties, where are your, where is your data going, do you know where your data is going, do you know, do you have data flow of of your applications, is there any third party integrations, how are you approving your third party integrations? Okay, all those is continuously asked, and that's gained a lot of prominence here. And I think with two new circulars I can maybe mention: the IT outsourcing policy
Guidelines from RBI.
guidelines, right, where a material vendors, where it has been clearly identified by RBI that IT operations is being outsourced
Yeah.
by
That's
regulated
a critical
entities.
component in the
Correct.
working of the bank.
IT could be, the IT infrastructure could be here, but the operations is outsourced. How are
Outsourced.
you going to do that? SOC operations, a
Yeah.
very classic example. SOC is not always, SOC is always outsourced, including the SIM tool. Okay, the data is going to a third party SIM tool, hosted somewhere, and monitored by a SOC team. And how are
Yeah.
you managing the data and also risk towards it? How are you improving the operations and the service provided? So that's gain, good practices. And at the board level,
I think we have the next question.
regular reports are being done. I think the next question is from Shreyas. Can you provide examples of significant fines or penalties related to TPRM non-compliance? Okay. I'll take an example here, right? If I have to take an example here, I think due to a vendors non-compliance to data localization, I think the business operations of an organization was passed, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't always come out explicitly in the reporting, that, all right,
It's
in
because
terms
of
of,
a third party,
yeah,
or
right,
there was a
okay.
breach, but
But
you can meet it up.
RBI, not just RBI, IRDA and SEBI are definitely, tightening the screws on the regulated entities to make sure that their third party risk management is very comprehensive and minimal. So that's there. Okay.
What tools and technologies are available to support TPRM and regulatory compliance? So, like I said, there are some platforms available globally. So, if you look at it, there are platforms like Archer, Metric Stream, which again are very heavy and complex tools that are available, which you can use for TPRM adoption. It helps you set up your TPRM practice very streamlined. But again, these are for large enterprises, and you need to have thousands of vendors to be able to manage this to justify the return on investment. There are different tools that are coming up in the recent phase. Like I mentioned, Compass is one of them. Wherein it's lightweight and it's nimble and it's easy adoption that will be there. So platforms are available. You just have to figure out the one that is worth your return on investment that you are expecting from this program, and it is tailored to what your processes are.
Okay. Thanks, Bharat. I think I'll, the next question. Another interesting question. What role does continuous monitoring play in effective TPRM?
Yeah. So we mentioned this, right? So a typical TPRM framework, you tier your vendors and then you say you will do periodic audits. Now this can be quarterly, this can be yearly, things like that. Now, while that gives you a point in time assurance, having a continuous monitoring wherein you are getting key metrics, reported to you related to incident, related to vulnerability, related to patch, that gives you a bigger assurance. So based on the type of vendor that you have and what you have engaged them for, so maybe it is application that they are being provided, or it is some services related to IT operation that is being provided. You can have drop various metrics that are important. So beyond the typical SLAs and are those being met, you can look at these metrics to ensure that you are monitoring the performance from a security perspective.
Okay, thanks, Bharat. I think next
Mm-hmm.
one.
Yeah.
How should organizations report TPRM findings to stakeholders and
I think this is a
regulators?
very critical one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You want to take it?
I'll take it up. Okay, great. Okay. See, there is nothing called TPRM findings, is what I would maybe start with, right? My mentor always says that information security is managing risk to security, right? It's very simple definition, but a very strong definition. Okay. Business again is about managing risk, continuously facing the business and taking the right decisions as you grow, right? Similarly, I think third party risk management is about identifying those risks, right? Like we said, you identify the critical vendors and assess them as much possible. See, there are ways to assess whether you can do a on-site audit, remote audit, okay, what is the periodicity that you want to do, etc. I think what we envision is that moving away from the a one time audit or a remote audit, right, a one time assessment, a point in time assessment, to go into a mode of a continuous compliance, to say that okay, my I'm getting an assurance from the vendor that okay, my vendor is always compliant, whether it is patching his systems, right, whether managing the vulnerabilities, whether doing the VAPT and closing the vulnerabilities of time. This gives me continuous compliance and an assurance to me. I think that is there. And as we have a a centralized management to this, I don't think it is to be reported as a finding or anything, if in an exceptional case, okay, saying that a vendor is not listening to me, but it is all about managing the risk to them, right, working cohesively, I mean working with them, trying to.
So as long as you have a process in place and that you're tracking it, that's all that needs to be managed. You don't need to report the findings from that to go to the any stakeholder or to a regulator.
Exactly, unless they want to do, because at the top management, what they are looking for is how am I managing the third party risk? How am I managing my cyber risk? How am I managing? Am I, our process implemented so that my risk is, managed in its most minimal way. My risk mitigation measures are perfectly working fine. Where I can improve, what technologies and process and tools have to be there. That's what I would say. It's not findings per se. So yes, okay, I will check any more questions. Just a second. Okay, okay. So I think
I think there's one question from
Iyer.
yeah.
How is maturity of TPRM in India, or SIG like kind of standardized information gathering process gaining momentum?
Yeah, I think with the circulars that now RBI is issuing on how third party risk needs to be managed, we are just at the cusp of starting this entire TPRM becoming a focus. Is it as mature or is it as robust as a practice as what it is in US or other markets? No, it is only just starting, and the practice is very ad hoc. So from a maturity perspective, I would say it's just ad hoc. Second one, regarding the adoption of SIG and SIG Lite, there are still companies which have outsourced business to India wherein they use SIG and SIG Lite to measure the effectiveness or see the controls how they are performing for vendors. But in India, by and large,
What happened? Yeah, continue. I think you're good.
Sorry. In India, by and large, the adoption of SIG and SIG Lite is very minimal, and there is no standardized assessment that is yet in place. Most organizations devise their own framework, and that is how it is being done. So that's a very crucial market need that is there. That we have a standardized assessment process on how you 1630 and how you go ahead and assess your vendors. So I hope that answers your question, Ayer.
Yeah. Okay. I think I will take up the next question here. Okay. Uh, 1 second. Yeah. What tools and technologies are available to support?
I think we answered this already.
Yeah,
I think
this one we
somebody
answered
already asked, so I think it's a repeat question.
Okay. How should organizations approach vendor selection and due diligence process to minimize regulatory compliance risk?
There's a lot of focus on regulatory compliance risk only. Yeah. So, like I said, it's important. We touched upon this during the webinar. What kind of what kind of is this data being managed by them? Is data being accessed by them? So you profile your vendors based on the kind of services that they provide and what kind of access to data or your environment or your applications they have. Once you do that, you tier them, let's say at least in a minimum of three, and then or going up to a maximum of five or six to say how you are classifying them, and then put in place a structure to say how are you going to assess them right when you're onboarding them, and then your periodic monitoring and assessment phase. This way, as critical vendor what are the things you need to focus for the security assurance, and you can manage those risks effectively.
Yeah, I think adding to that, I think the control environment and understanding the service provided by the vendor is very
Very
important,
important.
right?
Yes.
The same vendor could be providing services to multiple clients. It's not that the vendor is providing services only to
Only
me.
for me. Yeah.
So a one size fit all, maybe
May not work.
okay, may not fully work, but maybe okay with some governance level controls and a process level controls. But technically speaking, which is where we have always seen incidents and potentially vulnerabilities not being taken care, I think with regards to that, it has to be looked from a perspective that what is the how is the data flow happening to me, how which systems, which infrastructure systems are there, right? What is that is providing service to me, is that
At risk.
at risk, and whether the risks are mitigated there. And that's why like I said, the vulnerabilities being managed at the control level, at the control framework, and the control environment for the service being provided to me has to be taken more importance. Okay, I think we will
We are
we
good
have,
with the
yeah,
queries.
we are good. I think we have maybe one last question. No, I think yeah, we are good.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
we addressed what one. That's the repeat question. Yeah.
yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, go ahead. I think I we hope it's a very informative webinar, a very prominent and key topic that we see that to in the Indian geography, in the Indian regulatory and overall business space. Vendor risk management, third party risk management is a key topic in all board meetings, cyber security, IT, anywhere. I think we hope it's a very informative session. And you have anything?
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. We wanted to cover a topic that is relevant for today's time and how the landscape is evolving. We'll keep coming up with more webinars, and we hope you had a good session. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Any other questions? I think you can feel free to mail us anytime, and we will definitely respond back immediately. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.